All right, so we're here this evening with Kyle Chen and Averie Younge with Vote16 MN. They're going to tell us about their work to lower the voting age, and we'll learn more about other efforts going on in other states. I'll just briefly say that LW Maine has a position to lower the voting age to 16 for I believe, local elections, but they are in the process of advocating for a bill this year, and they also have held other educational webinars. So Vote 16 is I'll let Averie and Kyle get into it, but glad to have them with us tonight. Averie is the executive director of communications, and Kyle is the executive director and coordinator. And this is mainly just an informational webinar concerning youth enfranchisement. So please feel free to ask any questions throughout the program, or also put them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So take it away, Averie and Kyle, and I see you have your screen shared, so feel free to just jump in.
Okay. Hi, my name is Averie Younge. I'm the chief director, I'm the executive director of communications with Vote16 MN. Me and Kyle have been working on this for probably coming up on a year now, maybe a little less at this point. But we are here to kind of present to you kind of the facts of why we're fighting to lower the voting age to 16 and enable 16, 17-year-olds to be able to vote. So thank you for having us. And yeah, we appreciate you all taking your time out of your day to listen to us talk about something we're passionate about. So, Kyle.
Yes. So my introduction. Hello, I'm Kyle Chen. I'm proudly from Union High School. I'm in the building right now. This is our health classroom. I'm wearing one of your stylish pins right now. And one thing to both know is me and Averie are both 16 years old right now, which is the age we're fighting for. But we both started out at 15 years old, which is right before the gun. So it goes to show how a lot of folks throughout the state have been working for this at any age status, like Sophia right now in the audience. And it's something that has a lot of momentum behind it, especially within the state and everywhere else. Before the presentation, we'd like to thank Sam for helping us coordinate this thing. He's been such a great help in organizing, contacting you guys, as well as getting prepped up for this presentation and just getting stuff in order. He's been a big help.
Alrighty then, we'll jump right into it. So to start, here's our kind of table of contents of what we're going to be going over, starting with why we should lower the voting age, which will be exploring all the reasons and benefits of giving this demographic the right to vote. Then going into some of the myths and mysteries, common concerns, questions about voting, and breaking some anti-enfranchisement arguments of why they shouldn't vote. Next will be what's the latest, kind of an update on what's going on the Minnesota side of this campaign, but also the United States, national fight to lower the voting age. And then we have some ways that you guys can get involved that we will have at the end, as well as all of our sources. I put those in the chat, but those will also be at the end of the slideshow. If you'd like to confirm anything we're saying, or if anything seems interesting, you can go and find any of those. At the bottom of all of our, or a bunch of our slides, is this green box that says Vote16MN. That is our Instagram handle. I will also have that at the end of the slideshow. And we also have an email that's also at the end of the slideshow. If you'd like to reach out to us with further questions that you come up with or want to get involved or any of those things.
Certainly. So we'll start off with the core part of the argument, or why we should do, why we're working for this type of stuff. Number one here is the very core of the problem itself. That is that young people who, are involved with our government every single day, whether that be our education system, whether that be our healthcare system, or anything in between, like driving, or buying groceries, or that type of stuff. We are involved in every single step of the process. But even with that, we lack the ability to make those decisions ourselves through our Republican democracy. And that, in my opinion, and opinion of a lot of people that are in the coalition, is a simple injustice. The right to vote, or the power to vote, is the power to influence those who represent you. That is, I'm sure you guys all know by now, the power to vote, or the power to leverage your vote, is the power to tell your representative in whatever legislature to say, hey, I'm your boss, I can fire you or I can hire you. That's what matters, because at that point they listen to you, they listen to your concerns, and they listen to what you advocate for. Otherwise, those type of things tend to go out the window. We can see that in an interview done in California a while ago with their center done by children, where the power to vote was a point given by their senator on why they shouldn't listen to them. And that is very simply an injustice. We deserve a seat at the table, and lowering the voting age is one of the most critical ways to achieve that.
Yeah, okay. The next point is called the sweet versus sour spot of voting, and this is a little more psychological. Basically, the sour spot is actually from ages 18 to about 24, because that is when you are going off to like college, or like you're moving out of your house if you don't end up going to college. But that's when you are first an adult, you're coming into who you're going to be, and there's a lot of changes in that. Obviously, that's when you like come off your parents' insurance, like you're paying for your own things, you're paying for either, like, to go to school or, like, to have, like, a real job at that first time. So that's a really big time of change and being independent, and you have a lot of things that you're thinking of at this age range. In this time, voting is often not the main priority that these kids have, or like that these younger adults have, because they have so much other new priorities and responsibilities that they have to be constantly thinking about and working through and working towards their goals of where they want to be in life. So voting kind of gets set on the back burner and they honestly forget to do it. And that kind of rolls into the sweet spot, which would actually be from 16 to 17, because of actually being in school still and actually like living with your parents still, because obviously you're a minor at this time. So in the state of Minnesota, you have to take a civics class like in high school. That is a law now. You have to take a civics class in high school. So that keeps the conversation around voting, because obviously teachers are talking about the importance of voting, why you should vote, how to vote, any of those things. But then also you're in the space with your parents at home to be talking about voting and how to vote, and you can like go vote with them and they can help with all of those things. Versus that 18 and 24 range, some people go out of state either for the first job or going to school, like for college or any of those things. You have to mail in an absentee ballot that way. That adds a lot more complexity versus obviously still being in state to the state you're registered to be voting in. So that's kind of the difference there, which rolls into habit building. How when you don't vote in those first 2 years, so in that 18 to 24 range right now, if you don't vote in those like first 2 or 3 elections you're able to vote in, it sets you up to not have built the habit of voting and to consider needing to vote every year or like every election cycle. And so you don't. You build the habit of not thinking about it. And because you built that habit, you don't end up voting. And that decreases the lifelong voter like rates that you have. So like you may vote in like a couple of elections, like some of the like big ones that feel really big to you, but you're not going to vote in every single one, most likely. That's kind of the like brain psychology stuff behind that. Which also kind of rolls into increased voter turnout. And Kyle, I will roll that over to you.
Of course. So of course, as we just talked about, when we lower the voting age from 18 years old, which is unideal, to 16 years old, which is more ideal for students to start voting for the first time, that increases in general, our voter turnout rate. And you'll hear a lot from people all around that young people have historically low voting rates, and that is a fact, but that is considering the current status quo of being 18 years old. We find in these three wonderfully made graphs by Averie Younge the difference between people aged 16, 17 years old and 18 years old and above in the rates of voting. These three places had their voting age lowered at one point or another to come apart: Norway and Vienna. Tacoma Park in 2020 with their local elections, which they lowered the voting age in, they saw a 16% increase in voter turnout from 16, 17-year-olds in relation to everybody else. You can see the same in Norway in 2011 for their municipal elections, where the younger people had 14% higher voter turnout than everybody else. That goes again with Vienna. And there's a recent study that was published that saw individuals who were enfranchised at Tacoma Park back in 2020 who right now still show higher voter turnout because they built that habit early on because they got to vote for the first time while they're still not in a transition phase, like 18 years old. That is a enormous thing because obviously speaking, we want to have the highest voter turnout possible. I'm confident that is one of the goals of the League of Women's Voters. And what the statistics show again and again is that lowering the voting age is an integral component in ensuring that that happens.
Are there any questions on any of that? I know that's kind of a lot of information before we keep moving on. Okay, I'm gonna keep going, but feel free to unmute, raise your hand, any of those things. Catch us now, but we'll also have time to circle back at the end of the slideshow if you'd rather wait. Yes, let Juan.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt this really informative and detailed presentation that you all put together. I just wanted to, because I have to jump off, just really wanted to introduce myself really quickly and just say thank you to the young people that are on the call that are facilitating this. Very, very excited about the work happening in Minnesota, the coalition building and partnership cultivation that's happening. And, Kyle and I were in pretty frequent contact. If I can be helpful in any way, please let me know. Please reach out. I do have to jump off, unfortunately. I'm sure the youth on the call can speak to what's happening nationally, but I just wanted to say thank you for coordinating this and look forward to continuing the great work that's happening in Minnesota.
See ya,
Thank you.
Juan.
Okay, anybody else with comments, concerns, questions? Okay, now I'm going to click off, but keep raising your hands, interrupting any of those things. So next up is the myths of kind of what people tend to think regarding lowering the voting age and kind of battling that. This should address some questions, like some things you may be thinking. If not, please feel free to obviously bring up more things. We want to try to explain as much as we can here today. First up being immature, that teens are too immature to vote. To kind of explain this, there's something called hot versus cold cognition in the brain, which is hot cognition develops at 24 years old, and that's the more spontaneous, time-sensitive, peer pressure kind of decisions that we typically would associate with teens and kind of that recklessness. This is where the teen stereotype of recklessness and peer pressure comes from and kind of what that develops from when we think of the brain developing forward in the prefrontal cortex. That's much further forward in the brain. Cold cognition develops at 15. That's when you can anticipate, you're cool, calm, and collected. There's no like high pressure in the moment decision. There's not a ton of like people pushing you to make a certain decision or do a certain thing. With private ballots, which is what we have in the United States, voting uses cold cognition because you can anticipate and plan to vote every 2 years. Everyone knows that. We have, our midterms and we have our primaries and like presidential elections, local election, all of those things. That is scheduled. You know exactly when it's coming up. You know the exact date you're going to be voting. There's no pressure from those, again, because we have private ballots. So nobody knows how you vote unless you tell them. So that is a big part of that. Are there any questions with that, with hot versus cold cognition? Okay, I'm going to keep going, but again, cut me off or raise your hand if you come up with anything.
All right, so the second common thing that we hear in response to the mission of trying to lower the voting age is the notion that students will, not students, children or people aged 16, 17 years old will often just copy their parents' votes. And obviously that isn't the thing that we want. And to be honest, their claim does have some standing. Statistics do show that there is a correlation among student, child and a parent's votes overall. But what that particular sampling misses is the fact that communities of who are often tight knit often share the same political values. Let's say a city in like Dallas, Texas, will very much have different like partisan affiliations than Berkeley, California. Those type of things are a bigger factor in whether a child agrees with the parents' vote or not. And this isn't just something I'm just claiming; it's something that we can prove. A study done by the American Academy of Political and Social Development, instead of doing a study in very closely knit areas, did a study in two very, very bipartisan counties in Maryland and Pennsylvania. And what they found there in districts that are very, very purple, that don't share a particular preference towards Democrats or Republicans or anything in between, have found that with them, there is a very, very insignificant correlation between a child's and a parent's vote. That shows that where it matters most, when you isolate the variables, that children and the parents don't show any correlation in their votes at all. And that way, that can still be applied to Minnesota if we apply the variables, head on there. That shouldn't really be concerned when we have these conversations, and we should instead be having conversations about how we can get students informed and that type of stuff, which Averie will touch on right now.
Before I move on, are there any questions with that? Okay. The next part is uninformed, which connects to the red car effect. And this slide is wrong. I apologize. The red car effect is basically when, think of it like you're driving on the road and someone like in the passenger seat says, "Hey, have you seen a lot of red cars recently?" You might say, "No, you haven't. Like you hadn't really noticed before." But now that you're thinking about it and you're thinking about the number of red cars and you're thinking about all of that as you're driving, all of a sudden you may start to like see, or like you're like, "Wow, I didn't realize there was all of these red cars in this parking lot on this highway." Like whatever, you're starting to acknowledge them because you're thinking about it and you're like unconsciously like expecting, and you're looking for them now. This is the same with information about politics and voting and wanting to be involved in that process. Before I stepped into Vote 16, I wasn't necessarily super like engaged in the voting sphere and civic advocacy and engagement, all of those things. But as I got more involved and I started looking for this information and thinking about it more often, it kind of came to me much easier and I got more of it involved, kind of like thrown at me almost, that I was seeing and being in and interacting with more often, that I was acknowledging now, versus maybe seeing a pop-up here or like a passing comment here that somebody says that I ignore and kind of filter out, naturally, which our brains do. They filter out information that's relevant and important to us and what we want to be hearing and thinking about. So once you start anticipating that, it kind of sticks in your brain better and you actually acknowledge it versus kind of filtering it and not really even noticing those things. So again, that applies to politics and how you're voting and what candidates are saying and how to vote and any of those things, as well for that. Are there any questions with that? I know this slideshow, I know this slide does not explain that. I will edit this before we send it out to you guys afterwards, but does that make any sense? Okay, feel free to cut me off again if you guys have any questions, but we are actually approaching the end. So we're going to start rolling into our 2025 season and 2026 season, kind of looking at how we did, this year, what's our plan next year, next session, and steps beyond.
Of course. So, obviously speaking, a majority of the Vote 16 work is going to be legislative. We had bills in the House and Senate, if you want the bill numbers, that is Senate File 1557 and House File 2003. And they were our measures proposed to lower the voting age for school board elections, or allow districts to take that measure themselves more specifically. And in regard to that, we had a lot of success, especially for our first year of this coalition being in existence. We gathered students together. We took days to go on the Hill and talk to legislators and senators. We organized people to meet out, in their homes virtually. But it was a lot of work of trying to contact people in the Capitol and saying, hey, we exist, we are passionate, and we really want this to happen, and we want you to work on our behalf. And that with that regard, we saw major success. Averie will talk about the people who were integral to this process later on. But in general, we've had a ton of success and just getting the word out, spreading those conversations, which is the most integral part, and of course, getting our bill talked about, which is still incredibly crucial. In terms of the future for next year's session, we will plan to carry on our bills, have a hearing, organize speakers before then, hold workshops, have more days on the Hill. But in general, it's a lot more of building coalition, making sure that more students are aware of this process. If any of you guys in this audience know any young people yourselves that would be interested in this work, feel free to send them our way. We'll be glad to take them into our care and, of course, work towards this cause. But we believe, especially with our start, that we will have a great journey going forward with this cause and our mission.
Yeah. So to list more of our supporters that we had that were integral, mainly in the House, but also other organizations as well. Our author in the House was Representative Sensor Mira. We also worked with Representative Greenman and Representative Vernig. And then our author in the Senate was Senator Swadzinski. We also worked with Chairman Senator Carlson, Senator Weston, and Senator Bolden. And then we also partnered with and worked with the Minnesota Youth Council, the YMCA Center for Youth Voice Youth Advocacy Cohort, and Believe in What's Possible. So thank you to them. We wouldn't have been as successful without their support, and we're hoping to continue building support and hopefully adding the League of Women Voters as a supporter if possible. So thank you.
And of course, a big part of the question of why we're doing this is what's happening in the status quo. We all have our reserves about how elections are going right now. I'm sure of that. But what's important to take into account is the momentum that's building in the United States right now. We recognize that, especially statewide, this will be an incredibly hard battle that will take likely a long time. But what we have to consider is the momentum that's happening nationally. Right here on the right, you will see a list of cities that have enfranchised their students to be 16, 17-year-olds to be able to vote in the respective elections that are listed down. Also, Toronto, Canada also did the same this year, which is incredible. But as you'll see with the years of 2023, 2024, and 2025, that this type of thing is rolling, that it's going ahead fast, and that we need to jump on that momentum that's happening in the United States, and we need to carry to the waves with it. And of course, we've been looking at success, and it's been really great. But the time really is now, and that's a big component of why we're working so hard in the status quo.
Yeah. And I will answer this question in the chat if I can get it to pull up. There we go. Is the bill experiencing party pushback? Thank you for asking that question. Yes, there has been a little. Typically from the Republican Party, there is a little bit less steadfast support, but we are still working to get bipartisan support. We've been speaking with several senators. I know I've been speaking with my senator from Shakopee. We do have a Republican senator, but we have a Democratic representative. So kind of talking to the two sides. There is different ways that we need to talk to the two sides, but we are still pushing for that, and definitely bipartisan support is the goal.
And I'll know question, which is, has the bill been historically introduced before? And the question is, the answer is yes. Let me pull this up real quick. I believe in, let me find this real quick. And the 2019 to 2020 session, there was a bill introduced in the House by Representative Gomez and Representative Den, who is no longer serving right now, to lower the voting age for city, municipal and county elections. Unfortunately, the bill did not see much progress beyond that, but we will definitely not, and oh, by the way, there were likely a lot other more bills that were introduced in the past that I probably haven't seen, but we will certainly not see that as a roadblock to our mission. Of course, there has been some, some lack of progress in the past, but we know as a coalition that if we keep on pushing, if we keep on raising conversations, that we will go at least somewhere, and that is really crucial. So even though there has been bills again in the 2019 session that have not been got as far as we'd like to be, we will hopefully try to continue its legacy and go forward.
Any other questions?
I have a question, or more
Yes.
clarification. So, I guess Vote16 pushes for lowering the voting age, mainly school board, municipal elections. Are they also working in other states to lower the voting age for statewide elections? I know that I had mentioned Maine, and they introduced a bill with the League of Women Voters Maine, led by young people there to lower the voting age for local and statewide elections. And I think the bills that you're talking about here in Minnesota, those are just for local elections. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. But I'll note that our campaigns have a very big variety. Of course, all the cities you see on the right here, they're all cities that have been passed at city measures. That's something that Minnesota does not have the privilege of doing, unfortunately. But with other states, they see a lot of different stuff. I know with Vote16 New Jersey, they have both campaigns to lower at the state level and city levels. With Maryland, they face the same issues as us, and they had their House bill actually have a hearing 2 months ago in their House Rules Committee, which was incredible. They had a lot of conversations, but it does go to show that statewide measures, statewide campaigning is still happening all the time.
Yeah. Any other questions? Sam, does that clarify what you're trying to say and answer your question?
Yeah, thanks, Avery. And I never introduced myself. I'm Sam Strukens, with the League of Women Voters Minnesota, and yeah, thank you for speaking with us about this. Our state league does not have a position yet, but I appreciate you for starting the conversation with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having us again.
Mhm.
Any other questions, either in the chat or just raise your hand, speak out loud, whatever you want to do.
Sue, hit us.
Okay, I'm wondering, are you doing a parallel rollout at the city levels? Or are you just concentrating on statewide?
So unfortunately, within the Minnesota Constitution, I don't think House rule applies to us, but the fact of the matter is, if a city were to pass a resolution saying that they want to lower the voting age, like cities in California can, they would have to formally ask the Minnesota legislature.
Oh,
and
okay.
they would have to go through all the process of trying to pass that. We find it both easier and also probably more successful if we do that statewide. It causes a lot less issues with targeting of cities. It's a lot faster.
Okay. And then I'm also curious, what kind of engagement are you doing at high schools to get some momentum, within your student population?
Yeah, we've been recruiting through other organizations. I know a big connector that a lot of our student ambassadors have been a part of is Youth in Government, which is a YMCA politics mock government club that a lot of people overlap with. So that's been a big touch point to be like, hey, you're already interested in this topic in general. How would you feel about this? That's definitely our biggest way so far. Also, obviously, Instagram and social media and getting those blasts out, having conversations with those we already kind of know someone to know someone. But then also we have discussed looking at some kind of like tables or things at certain schools to try to get more outreach to people that aren't necessarily connected to youth and government or any of those sort of things. So this first year was more just kind of getting our feet down and kind of seeing what people kind of think about the bill and figuring out kind of what our messaging needs to be successful. And this year we'll be definitely pushing more on the outreach, definitely on my end. I know that's my job for 2026. So does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. I always look, my name is Julie Rogers Bascom. I work with a lot of young people in civic engagement. And my question always goes to, what's your why? Well, why is this important to you, Averie and Kyle?
Sure. This is important to me because I also got connected to Kyle and this organization through youth and government. I joined youth and government in 8th grade. Absolutely loved it. I started going up the courts track. Love the courts. Still there. It's having the time of my life every year. It's the best 4 days at that conference. But as I got more involved in kind of like understanding what's actually happening, because I had taken some, global studies history courses before, but I didn't really have like a understanding of what's actually happening. And at youth and government, it is more of a role play. So you actually are doing some of those things on a smaller state level. I started to want to get more involved and really understand what was happening in the real world scale and not just the state level. So that's how I kind of started connecting with other groups. Like I listed the YMCA CYV youth advocacy cohort. That's another group that's been a really big support to us that me and Kyle are also both a part of. And from there, we've had conversations with other youth talking about how important it is that we are able to vote. I know this past presidential election was a really big turning point, I think, for a lot of people in our kind of age demographic of feeling almost hopeless and not being able to vote because especially as a lot of the people that I hang out with and associate in these groups are more civically involved, we have strong opinions on what we want things to look like, but not being able to vote, it really kind of takes it out of our hands, even though we know how we would vote and we have reasons to back up how we would vote. So regardless of how anyone would vote, I think that was a big part of it, of feeling like there was nothing we could do. And even at this point, like if I were to pass this legislation, right, like if this legislation were to be passed, I like at that time I was 15 at that point. I still wouldn't have been able to vote, but I think it would have been helpful to know that I would be able to vote much sooner while it's still affecting me at that time, and having more youth vote, I think, would have been important in getting a bigger cross section of what that demographic and what that community actually wants, because there is a big youth community in all communities, in all spaces. So enabling that quadrant of people to have a vote would get a better cross section of what that district actually believes in. When we look at red district, purple, or blue, a big part of the people that are affected by how certain elections go, whether that be local, municipal, state, or nationally, are not being represented, and so their voice is not being heard. So I think that was a big part for me, was that like hopelessness and wanting to empower my peers and also myself. So yeah.
Thank you, Julie. Oh, by the way, I'm very curious to what the NYLC stands for in your tag. I know a NYLC that deals with youth. I want to know if that's the right one. Also, thank you, Erin, for adding the advice in the chat. From my perspective, at least from my point, it starts a lot at the school board level. Also, thank you, Lajuan, for coming back in. But a thing in Egan is, well, first of all, the mindsets or the views of the youth contrast very starkly to those who aren't in high school, and we see it reflected in our school board, where the views of our students that spend 40 hours a week in these institutions vastly disagree with the opinions of our school board, and that comes from, first of all, a lack of communication between the two bodies, but also for the fact that integrally speaking to their job, they don't have to care about what we think. If my parents might be concerned, but at the base level, for the students who know all about the schools or the districts that these school boards govern, they don't have any formal say at all in ensuring that their school board members care about what they say. But integrally, when we observe adults and their voting power, we see that with them leveraging the voting power, they can leverage that power to ensure that their representatives are able to not only able to, but have to listen to their views. Otherwise, you're out of office. That's what integrally voting should mean. And I hope that we demonstrated throughout the entire presentation that that power should be given to students, and we should be able to use it. I know in Egan, but also with prominently the Lakeville School Board, if you guys know all about that, where the students have very greatly disagreed with the school board, that we are often shut out of conversations. We are often shut out of those policymaking things that affect us 24/7. And that isn't right. That's why I decided, along with Averie and a lot of other students, to get into this work, because it is so important in protecting democracy and protecting our right to be heard and our right to be represented.
Well, snaps to you both. Thank you for really pushing this forward. I used to run Kids Voting Edina, which was a in-person kind of experience, and I was moved dramatically when I saw somebody come into the high school and he was wearing a sticker. He was a senior. He was wearing a sticker and it said, "I voted." And I said, "Did you vote?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "How did it feel?" He said, "Well, I was kind of nervous, but because I'd done kids voting, I knew what to do." And to me, and that was an in-person kind of experience. To me, that really demonstrated the power of kind of building this muscle, this civic muscle, if you will. So I think this is just such valuable, important, because you're not even just the future, you guys, you are the now. I don't think we need to wait. We need to make sure that you're out there with your voice and your ideas. And what did they say? Nothing about us without us is for us. So thank you for this work. Really, really important.
Thank you as
so
well.
much. Any other questions?
Julie, are you familiar with Nitin Palani? I'm just curious here.
Yes, he's on our Youth Advisory Council.
Yes, I'm very familiar with him also.
Okay.
All right. Please keep interrupting, asking questions. We do have a couple of slides left, just kind of going over sources and how you guys can get involved. But yeah, if that's it, then we're kind of getting to the end here. All right. So our first slide is how can you get involved? Step 1, follow our Instagram account at Vote16 MN and share it, please, if you have access or you know others that do. We'll post any updates, events, ways to physically be involved, and more there. We also can start sending out emails if that would be helpful, but the Instagram account is our main, most direct, most up-to-date form there. Step 2.
Step 2, reach out to your representatives or policymakers. Obviously, we hope to use our students and spread our coalition far and wide so that we can cover as much of Minnesota as we can. But being realistic, we want as many people as we can on board to contact their respective representatives or senators to get these conversations going. Oftentimes, they won't accept communications for people who aren't their constituents, which is just justifiable, but also means that we need as much people behind this as we can. So sending a quick email form to Senator Westland, for example, saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you. There's this bill, Senate File 1557, that I really want to have conversations about and get your views on it and talk about it." That is immensely, immensely powerful. Of course, we'll provide any information as needed beyond this slideshow. I think we list your emails at the end and on the site as well. But we are vote16mn@gmail.com. Send us an email. We'll reply very, very soon, answering any questions you have, giving you any resources you might need, and anything in that regard.
Okay, and then step 3 is write a letter of support to us at that email that Kyle just said to support the campaign in hearings and nationwide. If you do write a letter of support, we could potentially use it in a congressional hearing next year or in later sessions. Then also we could repost it either on social media or elsewhere just to kind of show that there is support behind this. This also could be just kind of things that we send to senators and representatives kind of more informally, but just to show that there is support from various demographics, various people, various organizations that believe in this cause in various different like congressional districts and locations in the state. So this isn't just a Twin Cities, South suburban kind of thing. This is a statewide movement. So that is step 3. Are there any questions on any of that? And again, we'll have the email and our Instagram on the last slide. So, okay.
Always
I'll
looking
offer-
for just a quick question. Do you have any talking points or things that we can weave into our messaging that we push out?
Yes, we do. We do
Okay.
have kind of an email template that we would send you if you
Perfect.
email us like, hey, I'd love to help push this. We would send you our email templates. You can put in your own personal anecdotes that you'd like to add, but kind of the main points, whether that be a bullet point kind of list of like, hey, here's the things you could feel free to say, or any of those kind of a little more scripted. We do have those things to help you out because I know obviously the slideshow was a lot. It's going to be hard to like say it off the top of your head. So yes, we will help through that, of course.
I'll also note
you.
that Lajuan, our Vote16 USA director, put in the chat, opportunity when coming in June, on Young Voices at the Ballot Box. It's a giant PDF file full of everything you need to know about lowering the voting age. Has a bunch of arguments that we listed here. It has national progress, some data statistics that we also shared here. It is in all regards a one-stop shop for lowering the voting age. It's an incredible resource. I've used it. The campaign has used it immensely. But yeah, it's an incredible thing. Click on that link. It'll be immensely useful if you want to just get to know the topic a bit more or start writing your own letters or that type of stuff.
Okay, does that answer that question, Miss Julie?
That's really helpful. Thank you. It's really helpful.
Of course. Any other questions? Okay. Well, here we go. There we go. Here is our sources. If there's anything that you wanted to look further into, we can also send this out into our little like thank you for coming email with the recording and also this slideshow itself. Once I update that red car slide, we can put these sources in there if you'd like to read any further into any of this. And kind of confirm what we said, that Young Voices at the Ballot Box is also on here on this slide, and then it will also be on the email that we send out if you'd like to see any of that. But this goes into some more of those statistics here, some more of the psychology behind what we were talking about, the transitional period, which is the sweet versus sour spot, correlation, causation between parent and kid vote, again, more psychology stuff, hot, cold cognition, all of those things. So this is also kind of our, like, basically everything we went over today. You can find the actual, like, statistics, and it goes more in depth than obviously our little paraphrasing today. But that is all we had. If you guys don't have any more questions, we'll stay on for a little while. We have time since we are done a little early so far. But if there are no questions, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to speak with us. Let us kind of explain what our thought process is, talk about why we're passionate about this, and hopefully supporting, or at least considering supporting our movement and our fight to enfranchise 16 and 17-year-olds. So thank you so much to everyone who took the time to be here and help us set all of this up. Again, shout out to Sam. This wouldn't be possible without you and all of your help. So thank you so much.
Thank you both so much for your time and your dedication to this work. I know you all have busy schedules, and this is just something that you're very passionate about, and any way that we can support you all, we're definitely here for increasing voter turnout, increasing opportunities for people to get involved in the political process. So yeah, I mean, I mentioned again briefly, I'll share the recording on our YouTube page from today along with the links in the chat. But the other thing is, yeah, for getting involved with you all, reach out to Vote16 MN. And for the league, we'll be continuing to, share out information, opportunities to connect with you all. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I think, education that needs to happen around this, and I appreciate you all for getting the conversation started, and we can, pursue at future league meetings any further actions. But this was a good way for us to talk about it with leaders here who are on the call that have been really passionate and doing all great work in their local leagues. So thanks everybody for joining, and yeah, I see there. I'm sure other people have other comments. This is not like I just started doing this work, but I know Julie and Sue and others here on the call, this is been their passion for a long time. So happy to hear from them and to work with them as well.
So real quickly, where are you from? I'm with the league in Edina.
Okay, yeah. I am in Shakopee, Minnesota, so kind of right in the Twin Cities area, right below Minneapolis, St. Paul area. If you know where Prior Lake is, we're directly touching Prior Lake. So yeah.
Okay.
I am from Eagan, or the city of Eagan, that is under the Dakota County League, I believe.
Terrific. Well, important work, and man, if I can be of support, or if you need an audience, one of the things I was thinking about is NYLC, the National Youth Leadership, and this is not an advertisement. This is maybe an opportunity. We have a podcast called The Power of Young People, where we interview young people who are working on efforts to make change. That might be just a vehicle. It's not necessarily, I mean, it's a national, but it's just an opportunity to share your voice. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and Sam knows also how to get a hold of me. And I'm also thinking, I used to live in Oakland. Have you talked to any of the young people in Oakland that worked on this effort?
I've actually spoken to the elections administrator in Oakland before about how that type of stuff. So, and the work they do is incredible, obviously.
Yeah, they're really youth voice focused. So I think that's really great. You're connecting to some really important voices. So I really appreciate you did a beautiful job being really clear. And if I can be of support, man, let me know. So congrats, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right. Well, we will continue to stick around. Please reach out to our Instagram, our email. Both me and Kyle have access to both. So if you are like, hey, Averie, love to chat, like I can see that, Kyle can see that. So it doesn't matter who you decide to name in that. We both have access to all of those things. So any questions, comments, concerns, want to get involved, want more information, yeah, all of those things. So again, thank you so much for your time. We'll stick around. We can probably stick around until 6:30. That's the time we had allotted. So yeah, we'll stick around until then if you guys have anything. If not, feel free to start trickling out. Thank you for your time.
Just want to say thank you guys. This was great.
Yeah,
Of course. Thank you for hopping on, Sophia.